In the year 3420, the galaxy had moved on from the memory of Earth. Humanity had vanished nearly 8 centuries ago during the Great Silence, a war so devastating that it wiped entire systems from the star charts. The Galactic Council declared them extinct, a species too dangerous and unpredictable to be mourned. Their technology was locked away, their history erased, and their names spoken only in whispers. For centuries, no trace of human life was seen or heard. Until now. It began with a pulse, faint, cold, yet unmistakably artificial, detected on the outer rim of Council-monitored space. A small relay satellite, orbiting a dead planet, picked it up first. A simple blip, repeating once every 42 seconds. At first, it was dismissed as a glitch, background radiation, maybe interference from a decaying star nearby. But then it changed. The blip became a pattern. The pattern became a signal. And the signal spoke. In an old language no longer taught in the academy, a voice repeated 3 chilling words, "We are coming." The message echoed across dozens of relay networks before it was finally flagged by the Galactic Core Defense Authority. Within hours, the Council's inner circle gathered in an emergency session, each representative cloaked in nervous silence. Admiral Vorinth of the Threx Dominion narrowed his compound eyes, staring at the waveform analysis glowing in front of him. "This code," he said slowly, "is Terran." The room froze. No one had used that word in official discussion for over 600 years. Across the galaxy, ancient fears began to stir. Entire generations had grown up believing humans were gone forever, destroyed by their own wars, lost to time. But the older species remembered. They remembered the way humans adapted faster than any known race. The way they turned broken machines into weapons. The way they smiled when surrounded, and then destroyed their enemies with impossible tactics. They remembered the Battle of Niren's Halo, where one human fleet held off 6 alien armadas using only strategy and timing. And they remembered how, in the end, humanity disappeared without a trace, taking their secrets and their wrath with them. Now they were back. Or something claiming to be them. On the mining colony of Dareth 5, a communications technician named Elrin sat staring at a screen. The signal had reached them too, but along with the words, there was a visual. A flicker of a silhouette, too dark to make out completely, but unmistakable in form. Humanoid. Tall. Armored. The figure looked directly at the camera before vanishing into static. She backed away slowly, her hands trembling. No one could fake that design. That was a Terran warframe. The kind used only by their elite vanguard units. The kind that hadn't been seen in 800 years. A week later, long-range scanners picked up something else. Movement. A fleet. At first, it was just a shadow, thousands of ship signatures appearing on fringe radars for mere seconds before disappearing again. But then came the confirmed sighting. A small scout ship orbiting the barren moon Vexel caught a brief image before it was destroyed. The image showed rows of ships, perfectly aligned, black as void, without visible engines or heat signatures. They made no sound. They transmitted no signals. But they moved as one. Panic spread quickly. Merchants fled central trade routes. Colonies went silent. The Council sent peace envoys to the outer regions, hoping to find answers, but none returned. The signal kept broadcasting every 42 seconds. Always the same words. No demands. No instructions. Just a statement. A promise. On the 19th day after the signal appeared, a station near the neutral zone picked up the impossible. An object moving at 5,000 times the speed of light, without warp trails, without phase distortion. It wasn't a ship. It was something new. Something built beyond known science. It appeared, paused above the station, and vanished. Moments later, every AI system on board shut down. The lights dimmed. Life support failed. And before the crew could react, every screen lit up with a single message, "Prepare." Now the galaxy watched and waited, paralyzed by a fear it didn't know how to name. They had faced wars, invasions, even black hole threats, but this was different. This was something deeper. Something personal. It wasn't just the return of a species. It was the return of a memory. A ghost. A reckoning. And somewhere, beyond the edge of known space, a voice whispered in a cold, echoing chamber. They buried us, but they forgot we were seeds. Humanity had returned. And the stars themselves began to tremble. The stars over the central systems had never felt so cold. Word of the signal had spread faster than any fleet ever could. Across thousands of inhabited worlds, the same fear grew, silent and wide-eyed. The name, human, was no longer a myth buried in old databases. It was real again. And with it came a storm of confusion, curiosity, and panic. The Galactic Council scrambled to control the narrative, but nothing they said could erase the fact that something impossible was happening. Humanity, thought to be long dead, had just knocked on the galaxy's door. Hard. Inside the Council's core chamber, the tension was heavy. The Threx, the Marnak, the Eridan, the Solari, all the elder species, sat in silence as new data poured in. Admiral Voranth stood at the center, his voice tight with unease. They're not responding to communication. They're not making demands. They are just moving. Coordinated. Silent. And fast. Every representative knew what that meant. This wasn't a rogue faction or some surviving outpost. This was a full-scale return. And it was deliberate. No one truly understood how humanity had vanished. One day they were at the peak of technological evolution, colonies in 7 galaxies, warp tunnels that bent physics, AI systems more creative than life itself. And then came the silence. Ships went missing. Planets lost contact. Terran space collapsed like a dying star. At first, the Council assumed civil war. Later, sabotage. Some even claimed the humans had destroyed themselves experimenting with time travel. All theories. No proof. Just silence. And now that silence had ended with a message only humanity would send, "We are coming." Old records were unsealed. Historical footage reanalyzed. For many, it was the first time seeing Terran war machines in motion. They were terrifying, black armor, faceless masks, sleek weapons that bent light. But it wasn't the machines that frightened the Council most. It was the humans themselves. No race had ever matched their unpredictability. No enemy had ever understood how they thought. To the Council, humanity was a paradox. Brutal yet compassionate, logical yet chaotic, peaceful until provoked, and then unstoppable. Among the Council members, a quiet voice broke the silence. Elder Sirav of the Solari, whose species had once allied with humanity during the pre-silence era, spoke slowly. "Perhaps we were wrong." All eyes turned to him. Perhaps they never died. Perhaps they left because they saw something we could not. Something we refused to admit. His words hung in the air. No one replied. But several members glanced at each other, remembering secret reports, buried files, and conversations once considered too dangerous to speak aloud. Some had suspected it. Long-range patrols had picked up strange energy spikes in deep space over the centuries. Faint, brief, but always different. A few thought they were ghosts. Others thought they were tests. But no one acted on it. Why would they? Humanity was extinct. Or so they believed. Then came the first confirmed image. It arrived from a deep space cargo drone, automated and unarmed. The drone passed through a collapsed sector of former Terran space, now considered cursed territory, and captured just 3 seconds of footage before its systems failed. What it showed left the entire Council silent. A human ship. Not a relic. Not a wreck. A fully functional vessel. Sleek, angular, black with glowing blue lines. And worse, it wasn't alone. Behind it floated an entire armada. Thousands of ships, tightly grouped, in perfect formation. They hadn't just returned. They had been preparing. News of the footage leaked. Entire colonies began evacuating outer territories. Civilians panicked. Protests rose. Some worlds even began building defenses, though everyone knew it would be useless. You don't prepare for a storm like humanity. You hope to survive it. On the trade world of Valis, a retired war historian named Karan sat with a younger journalist who asked the question everyone was now asking: why are they back? Karan's answer was quiet. They're back because we never paid for what we did. They're back to remind us. The journalist was confused. Remind us of what? Karan looked up at the stars and whispered, that we were afraid of them, and we chose to erase them instead of understand them. Behind closed doors, some council members confessed the truth. Humanity hadn't disappeared. They were betrayed, set up, trapped in a false war started by the council itself. Why? Because humans were advancing too quickly. They had begun unlocking things even the oldest species feared: dimensional energy, godtech, sentient time loops. So a vote was taken. Silent, unrecorded, and humanity was isolated, cut off, targets placed on their borders, saboteurs sent in. Then the silence followed. Now they had returned, not with fire, not with revenge, but with silence. And every ship in that fleet was a message. We remember. From the far edge of the galaxy, a single new signal broke through the static. No message this time. Just coordinates. A location in deep space. A place known only to the Council. A place where the betrayal began. The humans had not forgotten. And they were no longer alone. The sky over Arcadia Prime was crystal clear, painted in soft blue during the early hours of morning, as if the planet itself was trying to pretend that everything was still normal. The people bustled in the streets, unaware that something vast and ancient was moving toward them, unseen. Arcadia was a jewel of the galactic core, rich, peaceful, diverse. Home to diplomats, artists, and traders from over 50 species. Its spaceport alone handled more daily traffic than some entire systems. But that morning, every scanner, every satellite, and every defense platform surrounding the planet caught the same thing at the same time. An object the size of a moon, entering real space with no warning, no warp signature, and no identification code. It appeared like a shadow being pulled into reality. Black, smooth, angular, and silent. No lights. No markings. Just there, suddenly, above the upper orbit of Arcadia. Defense systems scrambled to identify it, and when they couldn't, they targeted it. The platform commanders waited for authorization to fire. But before the signal came, the object shifted. With a movement far too precise for something so massive, it rotated slightly, and then, out of nowhere, more shadows began to appear. One after another, they dropped from what looked like tears in space itself. 10, 20, 100. In less than 2 minutes, over 3,000 ships now hovered above Arcadia. Perfectly aligned. Motionless. Watching. The Council's emergency fleet arrived within hours. Dozens of cruisers, frigates, and carriers surrounded the unknown fleet, hailing them on every known frequency, including ancient Terran bands. The response was the same. Silence. Not a single ping. Not a single blink. The unknown ships made no move, no gesture of hostility, no reaction to being targeted. They didn't need to. From the ground, the sky darkened as the sun slipped behind one of the larger vessels. People looked up and froze. News feeds exploded with images. Massive black ships, sleek like blades, hovering like gods above them. Some screamed. Others fell to their knees in awe. But one word echoed through every voice, every post, every terrified breath. Human. Inside the main command center of the Council's fleet, Admiral Voranth stood watching the tactical screen. Every sensor told the same impossible truth. No energy spikes. No signs of power cores. These ships were somehow just there, running cold, completely undetectable until they wanted to be seen. He turned to his second-in-command, his voice grim. That's not a display of force. That's a message. They're telling us they don't fear us. On the ground, the first act of defiance was made by a small local ambassador ship. Without council approval, it launched from Arcadia's diplomatic port and ascended toward the largest human vessel. Its pilot was a Solari noble named Kelrin, a peace advocate who believed any conflict could be solved with dialogue. As he approached, he opened a secure channel, speaking calmly. "We greet you in peace. If you are of Terran origin, we ask for open conversation. We are not your enemies." There was no reply. He drew closer. The human ship remained still. Its surface, black like obsidian, had no visible entry points or windows. Kelrin continued, "I repeat, we are not your enemies. Let us talk. Let us." Then it happened. Without a sound, without a flash, Kelrin's ship disintegrated. Not exploded, disintegrated. As if it had simply been erased. 1 second he was there, the next gone. Panic surged. The Council forces locked weapons. Defensive systems activated across Arcadia. A single attack on a diplomat ship was cause for war. But as the admirals prepared to strike, their targeting systems crashed. Every screen went dark. Every scanner failed. Ships lost internal gravity for several seconds. And then, across every monitor in the entire fleet, the same image appeared, a single human face. Pale. Cold. Unsmiling. A man with deep-set eyes and silver armor that shimmered like glass. He spoke one sentence. "This is not an invasion. This is a return." The image faded. Systems rebooted. And just like that, the ships resumed their silent hovering, as if nothing had happened. On the ground, the people didn't know whether to cheer or cry. The image of the man had been broadcast on every civilian channel as well. For many, it was the first time seeing a human in real life. He didn't look angry. He didn't look cruel. He looked calm. Certain. As if everything was already decided. In the council war room, chaos boiled. Some demanded an immediate attack. Others called for surrender. But the data was clear. Any act of aggression would lead to annihilation. The human fleet had the capability to shut down entire systems without firing a shot. And yet, they hadn't. They had come to Arcadia, the symbolic heart of the galactic core, and made their presence known. Then waited. Across every screen, one more message appeared. No sound. Just words. "We were erased. But not forgotten. Tell your truth. Or we will." The countdown began. 10 days. And humanity did not need to speak again. The galaxy was already listening. The countdown echoed in silence. Each passing day added weight to the air above Arcadia Prime. Across the galaxy, tension thickened like smoke. The Council's top brass met in emergency sessions day and night, but no answers came. The human fleet remained unmoving, quiet, almost indifferent, as if it was waiting not for battle, but for judgment. The message they left behind was simple but terrifying: tell your truth. Or we will. And no one, not even the highest-ranking members of the Galactic Council, could pretend they didn't know what that meant. Behind closed doors, secrets began to resurface. Secrets buried centuries ago, during the final years before the Great Silence. Records long thought erased were found hidden in forgotten archives. Redacted transmissions. Shadow reports. Battle logs that didn't match public statements. One phrase repeated again and again in old code: Project Silence. It was supposed to be a myth, a conspiracy theory passed around by historians and fringe scholars. But it was real. And now, it was returning to haunt those who signed it into action. Humanity had not vanished on its own. It had been pushed, isolated, manipulated, and finally betrayed. The Council had feared what humans were becoming. Their technology had accelerated beyond expectations. They had discovered ways to bend reality, hack time windows, merge with AI on a level no species had ever achieved. In just 2 centuries, humanity had gone from newcomers to potential galactic superpower. They were unpredictable, yes, but also brilliant. Some species saw them as allies, innovators, even saviors. Others saw a threat. something that could not be controlled. So the Council acted. They orchestrated false flag attacks on human colonies, manufactured border disputes, spread propaganda about Terran aggression. Then, in a secret vote, never recorded, they authorized Project Silence, the strategic isolation and eventual extermination of humanity under the guise of preserving peace. Coordinated sabotage, manipulated civil unrest, cut off supply routes, and seeded viruses into Terran infrastructure. One by one, human colonies fell. Not to war, but to betrayal. And the galaxy moved on, satisfied that the problem had been solved. They never expected humanity to survive, let alone return. But humanity had survived. Not only that, they had adapted. In hidden systems beyond mapped space, humans built in silence. They developed ships that left no energy trails, weapons that left no debris, AI systems that could cloak entire fleets. And worst of all, they remembered everything. It wasn't revenge they returned for. It was exposure. From the shadows of the Council, panic turned to fear, and fear to infighting. Some wanted to come clean, to tell the galaxy the truth. Others argued that doing so would collapse the fragile peace between species. The Eridan homeworld would lose trade routes. The Threx Dominion would be blamed for leading the original vote. The Solari would be seen as traitors for staying silent. It would be chaos. But the choice was no longer theirs. In hidden corners of the galaxy, smaller species began leaking documents. Races that had always lived under the Council's thumb suddenly saw a chance to shift the power. Archives, testimonies, intercepted files, all uploaded to the galactic net. The truth began to spread like wildfire. The humans had been betrayed. And not just by one species, but by all of them. The whole Council had voted to erase them. Not because they were evil, but because they were better. And then came the second signal. It didn't come from the human fleet. It came from somewhere else, deep within a dark zone of space long declared forbidden. An ancient system, long collapsed. Except it wasn't collapsed. It was hidden. The signal was short, but unmistakable. Coordinates, transmission access codes, and a voice. A human voice. Female. Come. We are not your enemy. But we are your consequence. Ships were dispatched in secret to investigate the signal. When they arrived, they found something no one expected, a station. Gigantic. Over 100 kilometers wide. Black, silent, orbiting a dead star. Inside, they found a council chamber, almost identical to the current Galactic Council structure, but built by humans. And inside that chamber were files, footage, and logs showing exactly what the original Council had done. It was a museum of betrayal. And it had been waiting to be found. Meanwhile, on Arcadia Prime, the human fleet remained still. Not a single ship moved. Not a single weapon fired. Because they didn't need to. The galaxy was unraveling itself. Dozens of species now demanded accountability from their own governments. Protests broke out. Uprisings started. Borders cracked. Trust dissolved. And above it all, the Terran fleet hovered, watching, waiting. Admiral Voranth sat alone in his private chamber, reviewing the classified footage from the station. As the final video played, a human child being pulled from wreckage as Council agents planted false evidence, his claws trembled. He shut the screen, leaned back, and whispered to himself, "We did this. And they let us live. That was our mistake." The storm had not yet begun. But humanity was no longer a ghost. They were the reckoning. For 5 long days, the human fleet remained motionless above Arcadia Prime. Like gods carved from black metal, their ships drifted in perfect formation, untouched by gravity, unaffected by the chaos boiling below. The Council was fracturing. Protests erupted on major core worlds. Political leaders were forced into hiding. Whistleblowers revealed more than anyone expected. Detailed accounts of sabotage missions, communications proving Project Silence, and even recorded conversations between high-ranking officials who had spoken openly of wiping out humanity before it was too late. The galaxy no longer doubted. The truth was undeniable. Humanity had been hunted, not for what they did, but for what they could become. And still, the humans said nothing. Until the 6th day. Without warning, every major communication screen in the galaxy turned black. Civilian, military, even restricted government networks went dark. Then, one by one, the screens lit up, not with code or images, but with a live transmission. A man stood in the center of the frame, calm, composed, wearing a sleek uniform that shimmered like dark crystal. Behind him, the Terran insignia, long thought extinct, glowed gently, a simple silver circle enclosing a blue flame. The man looked directly into the camera. His voice was steady, measured, human. "My name is Commander Rian Salas, Terran Vanguard. This is not a declaration of war. This is a declaration of truth." His face was unreadable, neither angry nor proud, just resolute. "For 800 years, your council has told a lie. They erased our name, erased our cities, our colonies, our people. They labeled us extinct, dangerous, savage. But we were never gone. We left because we had no choice. Because survival required silence. Because our future depended on forgetting our past." Behind him, images appeared, historical footage, personal logs, faces of human children evacuated during the final hours of Earth's fall. Then came recordings of sabotage missions, alien ships posing as Terran war fleets, and the vote. Clear, unedited proof that the Galactic Council had agreed to terminate the human race in secret. Commander Salas continued. "We could have returned with fire. We could have erased you the way you tried to erase us. But we didn't. We waited. We watched. We listened. And now, we speak." He took a breath, his eyes locked onto the viewer. "We do not want revenge. We do not want to rule. We do not come to conquer. We come for the truth. To correct history. To bring balance. Not through destruction, but through exposure." At that moment, council leaders across the galaxy began receiving targeted transmissions. Evidence packets. Names. Coordinates. Entire digital libraries containing everything humanity had collected over centuries of exile. From secret council meetings to war crimes buried beneath black ink. It was overwhelming. And it was deliberate. "This is not about politics," Salas said. "This is about memory. About who we are. And who you chose to become when you feared us." He paused. "But hear this clearly. We will not be hunted again. If you choose to silence the truth once more, if you raise your weapons against us, if you seek to deny what we have survived, we will respond. And we will not hold back." Across Arcadia Prime, people stood frozen as the message ended. The screen went dark, leaving only the Terran emblem, gently flickering. Then all systems returned to normal. No more jamming. No more interference. The message had been sent, and it had been heard. The council met in a closed, emergency session within the hour. Accusations flew. Threats were made. But no one could deny the impact. The galaxy had changed in one broadcast. Entire planets declared independence from council authority. Military leaders stepped down. And some of the elder species, the ones who had voted for Project Silence, were suddenly very quiet. But not all feared the humans. Some began to admire them. Across colonies and stations, individuals spoke publicly in support of humanity. Former enemies now viewed them as survivors. Warriors who had been pushed to the edge of extinction and still chose not to strike back. Students began wearing Terran symbols in protest. Artists painted murals of Earth, now legendary. The story was no longer one of fear. It was becoming one of awe. And yet, something deeper stirred beneath the admiration. A quiet question that echoed in every mind: if humanity had come this far in exile, what else had they built? Rumors spread of Terran AI minds vast enough to calculate star system collapses. of time-bending experiments hidden beyond the Veil Nebula, of quantum minds fused with flesh, of cities floating inside black holes. No one knew what was real. But one thing was certain, they were no longer the same humans the galaxy once feared. They were something more. Admiral Voranth watched the full transmission 3 times. Each time, he noticed something different, not just in the words, but in the silence. Salas had spoken carefully, even kindly. But there was a line behind his eyes. A quiet warning. They weren't here to fight. But they could. And if pushed, they would. Outside the Admiral's window, the human fleet still hovered in silence. Waiting. Watching. And the galaxy, now waited with them. Arcadia Prime no longer slept. Its skies, once filled with trade ships and pleasure cruisers, were now haunted by the silent outline of the Terran fleet, a vast black armada casting long shadows over the cities below. The people did not panic, not anymore. Fear had evolved into something else, respect, curiosity, even guilt. Humanity had returned not as invaders, but as judges. Their message had been clear. They were not here to destroy. But they would not be denied. Across the galaxy, the ripple effects of Commander Rian Salas's broadcast had reached every system, every station, every world. Protests erupted on some council homeworlds. Military officers resigned in shame. Statues of council heroes were torn down by angry crowds who had once believed the lies. On other planets, silence took hold, a stunned realization that everything they thought they knew had been carefully constructed over centuries of control. Within the highest levels of the council, the fractures widened. Accusations turned into confessions. One by one, surviving members who had voted for Project Silence began to step forward, not out of courage, but out of fear. They had seen the human fleet. They had read the files. And they understood now that their greatest mistake wasn't betraying humanity, it was underestimating them. And yet, the humans still had not moved. Not a single weapon fired. Not a single demand made. The countdown had ended, and still, they watched. That was the final warning. On the 8th day, the council made its decision. A public address was transmitted across the stars, this time not from a human commander, but from High Chancellor Vereen, her voice shaking with the weight of centuries. She stood alone in the council chamber, no guards, no banners, no grandeur. Just truth. We were wrong, she said, her tone barely above a whisper. We erased a people. Not because they threatened us, but because we feared they would surpass us. We chose to betray instead of understand. We buried the truth in lies. And for that, we ask forgiveness. The broadcast didn't offer excuses. No politics. Just history. She confirmed the existence of Project Silence. She read the names of the officials who had signed the order. She called it what it truly was: genocide. Then, for the first time in galactic history, she stepped down. The council dissolved itself within the hour. A new transmission was sent to the human fleet, not a surrender, not an apology, but an invitation. The galaxy was ready to talk, to listen, to finally face the truth. And humanity answered. A single Terran vessel broke formation. Sleek, dark, and quiet, it descended through Arcadia's atmosphere with perfect precision. No weapons raised. No fighters deployed. It landed just outside the old council chamber, where thousands had gathered to witness what would become known as the Day of Balance. From the ship emerged 4 figures. One of them, Commander Salas. He did not wear armor. He did not arrive with guards. He walked alone, stepping through the ruins of the council chamber and into the light of a new galaxy. Cameras from 100 species broadcast his every move. His voice, when he spoke, was calm. Truth has weight, he said. It breaks walls. It exposes rot. But it also rebuilds. That is why we are here. There was no cheering. No applause. Just quiet understanding. Respect. And from that day forward, everything changed. Humanity did not claim power. They did not form a new empire or take control of the core systems. Instead, they offered something far more dangerous to those in power: transparency. They shared their records, their history, their evidence. But they also shared their progress. Technology that could heal ecosystems. Energy sources that could power planets for centuries. Medicine that cured diseases once thought incurable. But all of it came with one condition: no more lies. They formed the Terran Accord, an independent entity not built on domination or profit, but on preservation. Any species willing to share truth, history, and responsibility was welcome. Those who refused were not attacked, they were ignored. Left behind. A new galaxy was being shaped, and only those willing to face their past could walk into its future. Over time, even the oldest enemies came forward. Apologies were made. Treaties rewritten. Former Terran colonies long thought lost began to reconnect with their creators. For the first time in living memory, the stars began to feel united, not under fear, but under understanding. But even in peace, the galaxy did not forget. They did not forget the silent ships that once hung over Arcadia like a blade. They did not forget the voice that shattered centuries of lies. They did not forget that the species they had tried to erase had not only survived, but returned stronger, smarter, and wiser. And above all, they did not forget the final words of Commander Salas, spoken not with threat, but with warning. The future is yours, as long as you never again try to bury the truth. Humanity had not come back for war. They had come back to remind the stars who they were. And the galaxy listened.